3 months ago, I lost a $200,000 client contract, not because my work was bad, not because they found someone cheaper, but because I wasn't transparent about a critical timeline delay. That single moment of hesitation, choosing to stay quiet instead of picking up the phone, cost me nearly $200K in revenue and almost destroyed my reputation in the executive consulting space. But here's what nobody tells you about client trust. 87% of clients say they'll pay premium prices for brands they trust. The catch? Only 38% of consumers are willing to forgive a company after a breach of trust, even if you do everything right to fix it. If you're in client services, consulting, or any business where relationships drive revenue, the transparency frameworks I'm about to show you aren't just nice to have. They're the difference between sustainable growth and constantly replacing lost clients. Let me take you back to February 2024. I was 6 months into a year-long executive leadership transformation project with a Fortune 500 financial services firm. The engagement was going well. My client was seeing measurable improvements in their leadership team's effectiveness. Then, our team hit a snag. A critical assessment tool we were developing needed an additional 3 weeks because we discovered data integration issues with their HR system. It wasn't anyone's fault, just one of those technical complications that happens in enterprise projects. Here's where I made the fatal error. I convinced myself I could fix it internally without bothering the client. I told myself I was being professional by handling the problem quietly. The truth: I was terrified of looking incompetent. 2 weeks later, their SVP of HR asked for the assessment results in an executive meeting. I still hadn't told them about the delay. The project got escalated to their chief people officer, who discovered through her team that we'd known about the issue for 14 days. The contract was terminated within 72 hours. Not because of the 3-week delay. They would have understood that. They terminated because I destroyed their trust by staying silent. Before I show you the exact frameworks that rebuilt my reputation and client base, hit that subscribe button. I share real executive strategies from both my failures and wins, the kind of insights that actually work in corporate environments. Your future clients will thank you. I'm going to walk you through the 3 transparency frameworks I now use with every single client. First, the Preemptive Communication Protocol, which shows you how to share problems before they become crises. Second, the Reality Check Framework, which reveals when transparency actually hurts and you need strategic filtering. And third, the Trust Recovery System, the exact steps to rebuild credibility after you mess up. These aren't theoretical frameworks. They're the tactical systems that took me from losing a $200K client to signing 3 new enterprise contracts worth $420K combined within 8 months. After losing that contract, I did a deep analysis with 3 other consultants about when to communicate issues. We discovered that 76% of client trust breaks happen not from the problem itself, but from delayed disclosure. This led me to what I call the 24-hour rule. Any issue that will impact the client's timeline, budget, or expected outcomes must be communicated within 24 hours of discovery. Not when you have a solution, the moment you identify it. Here's the exact communication structure I now use. First, the situation. State the problem in one clear sentence. Second, the impact. Specifically quantify how it affects them. Third, the options. Present 2 to 3 potential solutions with trade-offs. Fourth, my recommendation. Tell them what you do and why. Fifth, the timeline. When they need to decide and what happens next. Let me give you a real example from last month. I'm working with a tech CEO on an organizational restructure. 2 weeks ago, I realized our proposed leadership model wouldn't work with their current comp structure. It would create internal equity issues. Old me would have spent a week figuring out the perfect solution. New me sent this message within 18 hours. Situation. Our proposed VP-level reporting changes will create a $40,000 comp gap for 3 leaders currently at director level who'd report to new VPs. Impact. Either we adjust the model, budget an additional $120,000 for title and comp changes, or risk losing these 3 people within 6 months. Options. First, modified reporting structure keeping current titles. Second, phased implementation with comp adjustments in Q2. Third, keep structure, but create senior director level. My recommendation, option 3. It preserves your strategic model while addressing comp equity. Timeline. We need your decision by Friday to keep our announcement scheduled. Happy to discuss today, if helpful. His response came back in 20 minutes. This is exactly why I trust working with you. Let's do option 3. That project just got extended for another 6 months. Here's the key insight. Clients don't expect you to be perfect. They expect you to be honest and proactive. According to a 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer study, 76% of employees globally trust their employer, but there's a significant trust gap between executives and associates. Only 19% of associates trust their CEO to tell the truth compared to 52% of executives. The same dynamic applies to consultant-client relationships. Here's where transparency gets complicated. After my transparency conversion, I made another mistake. I became too transparent. I started sharing every minor issue, every potential concern, every internal debate. One client actually said to me, "I appreciate your honesty, but I'm paying you to handle problems, not make me anxious about every decision." That's when I developed what I call the reality check framework. It's how you determine what requires transparency versus what you should handle internally. I use a 3-question filter. Question 1. Does this require a client decision or approval? If yes, immediate transparency required. If no, move to question 2. Question 2. Will this impact agreed upon deliverables, timeline, or budget? If yes, the 24-hour disclosure rule applies. If no, move to question 3. Question 3. Would the client want to know even if it doesn't affect outcomes? If yes, include in next regular check-in. If no, handle internally. Let me break down some real examples. Immediate transparency is required for things like technical delays affecting go-live dates, budget overrun possibilities, key team members leaving the project, or discovering scope gaps that need addressing. For your next check-in topics, you'd include minor methodology adjustments that improved results, alternative approaches you considered but decided against, or positive, unexpected findings. Things to handle internally include your team's internal scheduling conflicts, technical approaches that didn't work but didn't affect delivery, or normal project friction that you resolved. Here's the critical balance. Research from Deloitte's 2024 Global Human Capital Trends shows that 86% of leaders believe greater transparency leads to greater trust, but the relationship is more nuanced. While 63% of consumers are concerned about AI bias and want transparency, 77% don't fully understand how their data is handled. The same principle applies to client relationships. You want strategic transparency, not information overload. Share what matters, handle what doesn't. If you're getting value from these frameworks, take 2 seconds to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I release a new video every week with real strategies from Fortune 500 environments, not theory, but what actually works in the field. And drop a comment telling me your biggest client transparency challenge. I read every single one and your questions often become future videos. Now let's talk about what happens when you mess up, because you will. The question isn't if you'll make a mistake, it's how you handle it. Remember, only 38% of consumers are willing to forgive a company after a mistake, even when proper steps are taken to make it right. After I lost that $200,000 contract, I spent 3 months studying trust recovery and professional services. Here's what I learned works. The 5-step trust recovery protocol. Step 1. Immediate acknowledgement within 24 hours. Don't wait until you have all the answers. Acknowledge the issue and its impact immediately. Here's the template. I need to address specific issue. I understand this impacts specific client concern. I'm taking full responsibility, and here's what I'm doing next. Step 2. Complete transparency about what went wrong. Resist the urge to minimize or deflect. Give them the full story of what happened and why. Include what you knew and when, what decision you made, and why that decision was wrong, and what you should have done instead. Step 3. Concrete remediation plan. Don't just apologize, show them exactly how you're fixing it. Include specific actions with timeline, how you'll prevent recurrence, what it will cost you in time, money, and resources, and any compensation or adjustment you're offering. Step 4. Systematic prevention. Show them you've changed your process to prevent this from happening again. For example, after my transparency failure, I implemented weekly status updates even when everything's fine, a 24-hour issue escalation protocol, a client decision matrix shared up front, and backup communication channels. Step 5. Consistent follow-through. This is where most people fail. You can't just fix it once. You need to prove the change is permanent. For the next 90 days, over-communicate rather than under-communicate. Proactively share even minor updates, ask for feedback on your communication, and acknowledge their patience and trust. Let me share a real recovery story. After losing that $200,000 contract, I reached out to the chief people officer who terminated me. I sent her a detailed breakdown of what I'd learned, how I'd changed my processes, and asked if she'd be willing to have a conversation about what I could have done differently. We met for coffee 3 months later. She told me the termination wasn't about the delay, it was about the pattern of waiting until problems were critical before disclosing them. She said if I'd called her the day we discovered the integration issue, they would have simply adjusted the timeline. 6 months after that conversation, she referred me to another company in her network. That referral turned into a $145K engagement. Why? Because I demonstrated I'd learned from the failure. Trust recovery is possible, but it requires genuine change, not just damage control. Let me give you a practical 30-day implementation plan for these transparency frameworks. Week 1, audit current communication. Review your last 3 client projects. Identify moments where earlier communication would have helped. Note times when you over-communicated unnecessarily. Create your baseline communication patterns. Week 2, build your framework documents. Create your 24-hour communication template. Document your 3-question filter. Establish your regular check-in schedule. Set up your issue tracking system. Week 3, implement with current clients. Share your new communication protocol with existing clients. Schedule regular check-ins. Start using the Preemptive Communication template. Track which issues require immediate disclosure. Week 4, refine and optimize. Ask clients for feedback on your communication. Adjust your filter based on their preferences. Document what worked and what didn't. Build these practices into your standard operating procedures. Here's what I want you to remember. That $200,000 contract I lost taught me something worth far more than the revenue. Trust isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest, proactive, and willing to acknowledge when you mess up. The 3 frameworks I shared today, preemptive communication, strategic transparency filtering, and systematic trust recovery, have helped me build deeper client relationships than I ever had when I was trying to appear flawless. My client retention rate went from 60% to 94%. My average project value increased by 40% because clients trust me to handle complex situations. And I sleep better at night because I'm not carrying the stress of hidden problems. 3 actions for you today. First, subscribe to this channel for weekly executive strategies that actually work in corporate environments. I share both wins and losses. Second, drop a comment telling me what's your biggest challenge with client transparency. I read every single one and use your feedback to create future content. If you found this valuable, share it with one colleague who's building client relationships. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
This is the C-Suite Playbook, where Fortune 500 strategies meet actionable insights. Your competitive advantage starts here.